So this is yet another In Conservation with the series that is basically interviews with conservationists and other people, but everyone within the world of conservation. And it's talking to people about their passion, about their work, about their projects, about their books, all sorts of subjects. And I'm really quite proud actually, because over the last 4 years and over the last 170 interviews or so, we've practically looked under almost every rock, ranging from cryptozoology through to wildflowers, it's everything. So I'm really happy about that. And we're going to continue in that major way today because I have my guest, Georgie Bray, with me from the RSPB. And we're going to talk about her project. But actually, it's not her project because she's part of this project. I must quickly correct myself.
Yeah, please do.
Um, yeah, you're not carrying the flag on your own. Um, at Hope Farm. But anyway, listen, before we go any further, let me just say, but if you're watching this in the future on YouTube, please like and subscribe and tell all your friends and a few of your enemies as well about it because there's so many things to watch and learn about, and this will be one of them. So, Georgie, how are you and where are you?
Very well, thank you. Staying dry best we can today. I'm at home actually at our family farm, so not at Hope Farm, but at our arable farm in Essex, so not too far away from our Hope Farm in Cambridge.
Okay. And in Essex, I mean, Essex is quite a big place. Um,
Hmm.
so any sort of indication where in Essex or are you undercover?
No, not too undercover. We're about 20 minutes from Stansted Airport. It's probably the best way of
Yeah.
letting everyone know where we are. So it's North Essex.
I've had so many, or I have so many memories of Essex. I mean, as a young birder, I was confined to London until my best mate at the time got his driving license, and he was, I think, 16 or something. And the deal was that he would drive us birding for the first year, and then once I actually learned how to drive, the plan was that I would drive him around for the next year. But as things happen, that never did happen. But one of the things we did do is go to Essex quite a lot, ranging from Rainham, which is just on the border of London, on the
Hmm.
eastern London, all the way over to places like where do we go? Canvey Island. Is that Essex?
Oh yeah, yeah. Still right in South Essex on the coast there.
Yeah, and
That's what. And Mersey, did you go to Mersey at all?
no, but I did go to I did go to Elmley. That's Kent, isn't it? Sorry. Essex.
Yeah, no,
A
that
few
doesn't ring a
places.
bell.
Old Hall Marshes. That's
Oh, okay. Yeah.
oh,
Oh, now I can't think if that's on the coast, but I can't think if that's in Essex or not. I should probably know.
well, I'm gonna say it is in Essex,
Okay,
unless
we'll go
someone
with that.
else. Yeah. So not that I'm calling the shots here at all, but I've got a feeling it is Essex. Anyway, Um, how, I mean, look, I don't know you. I've never met you before. To be honest with you, I hadn't heard of you until I spoke with the RSPB and they told me about you in glowing terms. And I guess it's because you are one of those people who, along with your team, you just get your sleeves rolled up and get on with the work. And those, for me, those kind of people are the real conservationists. They're the ones actually doing the work, and they haven't got time to crow about it. Um, but before we get into that, and you don't have to agree with me because I know that's the truth, but you don't need to agree that. But basically, I just wanted to find out a bit about you because
Okay.
you seem quite young. So, how did you fall into this whole sort of scenario? And plus, I don't know what your scenario is actually. I'm talking, well, I do know, but but how did the young Georgie get involved in nature and its conservation?
Oh, that's very kind, David. I like. I'm just under the 30-year barrier, so I think I can still, yeah, call myself young.
Well, I think you're one of the
We could do
youngest.
that for a long time beyond 30, I suppose, can't we?
Yeah, you're one of the youngest guests I've had on this, actually. I think of the 170 people we've spoken to, I can't think of more than 5 or 6 that were sort of under 30. At
Oh
least
wow. Oh cool. I hope that I
you know why that is.
fly the flag high for that, for those
Yeah,
group of people.
I think part of the reason for that is the fact that when you're under that age, you still need time to achieve something, to do something to talk about, because you're just half the time you're learning, and it takes time before you can be in a position to then start talking about your work. But in exceptional circumstances like in yours, you've done so much in that age, before you even got to 30. So that's why I think you're here. But anyway, sorry, carry on. I've interrupted you.
No, that's all right. I mean, I think a lot of what I do talk about is sharing like the whole story from Hope Farm right from the beginning, which was when I was quite small. But it's a real privilege to be able to talk about that. So cracking on with it and doing it on the farm, and doing our best to do the sort of 20 odd years of RSPB's ownership justice, and sort of keep that going and keep the progress of learning and researching and trying to sort of demonstrate best farming possible. But going way back, like I've always been a very outdoors person.
Were you raised in
Not
Essex?
want Pardon?
You raised in Essex?
Yeah, on the farm that I'm still on now. So I've got strong roots here. And yeah, I'm not sitting still for very long, and I feel very lucky where I have grown up. It's a beautiful place. We've got a smallish farm here. It's got some lovely hedgerows, rolling hills, meadows at the bottom of the hill going into a smallish river that we just used to spend days in the summer paddling around, finding stuff in the water and sort of taking it out, looking at it and that sort of thing. Not necessarily with that much knowledge of what we were looking at, but just having an awesome time. And then I've grown up and I went to university. I went and studied zoology at the University of Nottingham. Again, very much an outdoorsy person, and doing the whole sort of like wanting to make a difference and do something that was really meaningful. And there I got really into birds, managed to go to Portugal and got into sort of bird ringing and monitoring there. But for a couple of years, I spent a lot of time thinking, okay, so I'll go and look at birds on a nature reserve. We'll go to this reserve and look at birds. And we had Attenborough Nature Reserve right next to us, so I'd cycle there and we'd go and do quite a lot of bird watching. And it was only really in as I was doing my master's in my final year of my undergrad where I started to really think of the link between farming and nature. Not that I thought it wasn't important, but actually is nature on farmland being that interesting. So I've always looked at farming with a very ecological hat on, in the natural systems that help us do farming and that sort of thing, and I always feel quite uncomfortable about the amount of sprays, for instance, that are used, and feeling like you're fighting nature the whole time. But walking around the farm at home, although the meadows and the river and stuff was a lovely place to be, I wouldn't go out and be like, right, I'm going to do some bird watching and pay as much attention to that as perhaps I should have done. And then I thought, right, okay, I'd love to be like an advisor or something and go out on farms and helping, or do something that was communicating what we're doing, talking about it, but also, going out and seeing things on farm and helping to look after nature on farmland. And then this job cropped up at Hope Farm for an assistant manager there. And it was getting involved with some of the research projects, digging tons and tons of holes in the middle of winter, helping out, learning an awful lot about the ecology there. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a dream job. And that was back in 2017. So I feel like it's quite a long time ago, or I feel like I've been at Hope Farm all my life, but I guess it's not that long. And I was just blown away by it, because I remember the first winter that we went there, I'm I've grown up used to fields in winter being muddy, horrible to walk on, your boots getting to sort of about this sort of size, and not really seeing that much interesting, seeing a few deer, maybe a few pigeons or something. Um, and then going to Hope Farm walking in winter, there would literally, like, there was one field that I helped surveying on, and I couldn't understand how on earth the surveyor I was working with could tell how many birds there were, because there were just hundreds. I thought, how can you put a figure on that when there's literally like clouds of them? And we had counted in that one field a few hundred skylarks. It was a big field, but still like a few hundred skylarks, a few hundred yellowhammers. And the whole place is just alive, and it's got so much going on. It's certainly not perfect. There's loads of things that we're trying to do to improve things all the time. But yeah, I found it really inspiring. And then I went, as part of my job as assistant, I went out to lots of farms, monitoring fields that had cover crops on them over winter, which is like a crop that you plant to build fertility in your soil and protect the soils over winter, versus, and uncultivated, so where the stubbles were left intact, which is great for farmland birds, versus like cultivated land. And just seeing the difference between the two was mind blowing, and be able to talk about the farmers, about what they're doing. I yeah, truly fell in love with it. And then I the old farm manager, he left a couple of years later and said, would you like to take on the job? And I couldn't believe I'd got the job, if I'm honest, or was offered it. And so here I am now, I guess. So I've been farm manager for over 5 years now, and we've got a fantastic team of people. We've got someone called Jordan who does the monitoring and or runs and organises the monitoring. We've got an amazing contractor who's Martin Lyons and his team. He's chair of the Nature Friendly Farming Network. And then we've got Sophie and Clara as well, helping out with doing carbon farming, and all of our volunteers and people in RSPB. We do quite a lot at the farm. But I do feel from where I guess it's helped me come into the job where I've grown up on farming and understood sort of the difficulties and the issues and how it works, has helped me get into the job I'm doing at Hope Farm. But I just feel very lucky I've kind of got a real sweet spot between the two.
Well, I'm hoping that I will understand more about the intricacies of farming, actually, because I think I like many people, especially many people living in urban areas, do not understand for a second what farming means, what it means. And then as other people in the conservation world, well, actually in farming world as well, where it's kind of us versus them, and I want to understand that a bit more soon. But going back to your roots again, were your parents interested in nature as such, or were they farmers? Not saying that farmers aren't interested in nature. I'm sure many
No,
are.
I know what not ecologists. No, they're farmers. I mean, they're pretty traditional farmers, but they do get it, if you know what I mean. Like, we've got Dad, he's sort of, he won't mind me saying, he's getting on a little bit, and has been farming in like a traditional way for a long time. And the idea of, and that he's sort of grown up in and learnt at college that it was very much about like intensification, farm everything you can, but also has seen wildlife decline over in his lifetime. And it took a few years to sort of persuade at home, say, okay, well, we'll put some awkward corners and stuff down to nature and manage hedges in a slightly different way, and add some connectivity with some wildflower margins and stuff. But then it's really nice. Like, we've got one field that was particularly awkward, and this year we put it not too far away from the house, and I thought that would be good, because then Dad, whenever he goes and walks the dog around, he'll see all of the birds there. And we had real nice numbers of linnets, yellowhammers, and I said, look, they're like red list species. These are birds that are really struggling and in decline, and we've got like a few hundred here that we've helped to survive through winter. And he really got that, and it's nice. I think there are, as with all industries and groups of people, there's a huge variation between like real farmers that think that every bit of land should be for food only, and then you've got farmers who have a proper like pioneering in making farming deliver for food, healthy food, for nature, for climate, for all of these different things. And then there's sort of all these farmers in the middle, which I'd say is like kind of where Dad is, where they get the real importance of it, but takes a few changes and kind of leaps of faith to get on that ladder.
So is that what you mean by the traditional way? I mean, the traditional way equates to intensification.
Yeah, maybe I used the wrong word there, because traditional is actually what we're going back to in a lot of ways in farming.
All right, we'll
There's
talk
kind
about,
of
yeah,
we can
we'll
have
talk
a
about
chat about that. There's that's a whole can of worms.
yeah. One more question regarding your background. Is your family sort of historically, are they farmers? You know, has it been from generations, or is it kind of a recent thing?
So on my mum's side, I mean, my family really doesn't come from very far from each other, to be honest. They have mum's family farmers about 10 minutes up the road, which is my uncle's farm now. And they've had that farm since 1850. And that's a lovely farm. Like, we were going around there the other day, and yeah, there's really, really nice place. And here, so the Bray's dad's side, we're third generation. So my grandpa, he came and sort of with the help of the council, purchased a small farm. And I mean, it's crazy now, like that wasn't that long ago. And a normal person, he didn't have like huge bank of wealth or anything behind him, managed to buy a farm, and then expand it. Now, to buy a farm, you'd have, normally we think around here, if someone's gone and bought a farm, they've made all of their money first, and it's almost like a nice retirement project for them.
So you
They've
need
got a few £1,000,000 kicking around, but yeah, it was quite different then.
so you need dough to buy a farm, basically. Correct me, listen, I'm going to ask you some dumb questions, really, but are there not farms where people collectively sort of run them? I mean, in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, and even in Spain, there's farms where, you know, the community, local community have got together and they all kind of manage strips of the land. Does that not work anymore in the UK?
Um, I mean, there's so many different kinds of farming. So to buy a farm outright, you need to have some money. But then there's different ways that people are involved in it. So you could be a farm contractor, where you don't necessarily need to own any land. You're just farming it for an owner. There's quite a lot of people, or there's quite a drive now to get more people involved in farming and making it more accessible, because otherwise it becomes such an isolated industry, for the select few. That's not what we want to do. So there's some people getting into farming by having like a flock of sheep, which is like not, I mean, you have to, it's a lot of work having livestock, but you can do it without actually owning land. And they have these things called flying flocks, where they go around and graze cover crops for farmers on their land, so that they can actually, that's their business without having a land to them. And then there's all sorts of different kinds of ways that you have the commons and stuff when you go into the uplands, so that they don't necessarily have to own land. And then you have us at Hope Farm, where RSPB owns the farm, thanks to help of some amazing donors who helps RSPB buy the place outright, and that's still farmed with a contractor. And then you've got the small families like us at home, where it's just something that's been handed down.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's find out a little bit more about Hope Farm, because I'm sure people listening and watching this would like to know exactly what we're talking about here. It's an
Yeah.
amazing project, so really keen to learn more about it.
Cool. Okay, so shall I share my screen and run
Yeah,
through?
please, that'd be good. Yeah.
All
And
right.
obviously, if you're watching this live, then you can go onto your speaker view and you can see the whole screen. But anyway, here we go. Hopefully,
There you go. It's taking a little while for the cogs to work, but hopefully that should share in a minute. Can you see that now?
I can just see that you're sharing your screen, but I can't see anything yet. There you go.
Okay.
It's up now.
It's popped up. Have we got? And just for reference, if I start pointing at stuff, can you see my mouse around?
I can see your cursor. Yes.
Oh no. Okay. Cool. Okay. So this is just a sort of a where we are. So that's us at Hope Farm. We're 181 hectares of pretty heavy clay farmland. And this is a view from the middle of the farm. And it's one of my favourite pictures we took last year. Because I think, I don't know if it's just because, click that, Mike. So it's because you can see the, because I know these are our fields, but they just look, to me, these fields here look very different to the ones on the further afield, where we've got things going on in the middle and all aiming to sort of increase the connectivity and opportunities for wildlife to exist and thrive in these massive fields whilst we're growing food. So I'm going to give a quick backstory of like before Hope Farm. So the RSPB bought Hope Farm in 2000, and excuse, that was my dog there barking. Yeah, in 2000, and the reason for buying it was for us to learn more about farming, for us to share what we're doing, and we really wanted to show that you could manage a farm and have nature thriving on it and still run a profitable business. That was kind of like the bread and butter of it. We'd recognise there was this huge decline on farmland. 75% of the land is farmed, and we were trying to advise farmers on what to do and to improve opportunities for nature. But there was kind of that backdrop before them where there was quite a bit of farmer blaming going on and sort of antagonism between farmers and conservationists, because farmers had been paid to take out sort of like hedgerows and intensify production. Wildlife had suffered, and because the farmers were the ones that were doing it, there was quite a lot of angst, and we saw these huge declines in wildlife. So then this was our plan that we set out. And all of these pictures, by the way, are taken on Hope Farm. So this is a local photographer who got this awesome picture of a hare. And I just like to use pictures of the farm because there's so many nice things to see on it. But yeah, so our aims, we wanted to demonstrate and research nature-friendly farming, learn a lot about farming, and actually RSPB, we're a conservation organisation. A lot of farmers and other people were thinking, what on earth is the RSPB doing buying an arable farm in Cambridgeshire? That it was pretty bog standard when we bought the place. There wasn't anything of particular wildlife interest. I'm sure there are some people out there who thought we were going to try and turn it into a nature reserve rather than keep it as a profitable farm. But yeah, we wanted to learn about farming and actually the difficulties and all of the hurdles that you come up against along the way, so that we can then share knowledge with farmers on how we're trying to make it work. As things have evolved, that's kind of over the last getting on for 24 years now, we've not just looked at how to make sure wildlife thrives with farming, but really look at our climate emissions and try and make it a much more of a holistic system. And we do that with sort of things like with regenerative farming practices, which I guess we could talk about regenerative farming a little bit later perhaps, and look at things in a much more joined up way. So yeah, for a long time, farming has really fought nature, and we've had ways that we can combat pests and disease with chemicals. And perhaps, to my mind, I feel like the potential positive interactions of nature have been forgotten a bit. So when I say about traditional farming, like doing things, having rotations, making sure that the soil is healthy and everything's thriving and you've got a stable ecosystem to help you do the farming, that's really what we're trying to get back to, and what has probably been lost on quite a lot of farms. It's worth saying as well that learn bit is really important, because a lot of what I'm going to talk about and what we do, it's not original to Hope Farm. There's like, these are begged, borrowed and stolen from scientists, researchers, farmers, most importantly. And what makes Hope Farm really special is that we've monitored that change, and we've got some awesome data going right from the start for every year to see what difference it makes. I picked out these graphs just to show what a difference has been made. So in 2013, we'd had the farm for like 13 years then, but these fields are still like big open spaces, not very accessible in the middle for wildlife. We've got sort of flower margins and stuff around the edge of them, but this is that bit, that field in the middle is the same field as what we have on the left hand side. So it's in the whole history of the farm, going back to like the Romans and before that, and how it's managed, an awful lot has changed in such a short amount of time. I mean, this is what, that's like 7 different fields turned into one. And there are probably reasons that they were different fields, because the soil was slightly different between these areas. There were some bits which are probably sectioned off and left because they weren't worth farming. And when we bought the place, every inch that could be was put to farming and put to agriculture, and policies really pushed for that. I love looking at all these old pictures. They've got some really interesting stories to tell. And then I thought it'd be quite nice to just go through a few like then and now pictures. So before going through these, we basically looked at the farm, looked for like marginal areas, looked at field boundaries, and wanted to make sure that we were providing flowering resources, seed resources, improving our hedgerows, our woodlands, and improving like water courses and that sort of thing as well, and just maximizing what opportunities we had on farm for nature, so that awkward bits of the field that were actually quite tricky to farm and that weren't yielding very well and potentially losing us money would then be able to benefit wildlife in some way. So you can kind of have win-wins there. So on the left-hand side, that was December 99. You can kind of just see the wisps of a hedge that was planted. And we're looking at it in the opposite way here. So you've got this copse with a scraggly bit of hawthorn in December 99 on the right is actually just out of view to the left-hand side in the photo in April 2022. I don't know. I'm trying to explain that clearly. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but the newly planted hedge in December 99 is the hedge on the right-hand side in April 2022. And I mean, this is one of my favourite hedges on farm. It's full of blackthorn flowers at the moment, and it's just brilliant nesting resource. And then this is the one, so we've got, this is with the same angle, then looking down the same track. It's a pretty thin hedgerow that we had in 1999. It's one of the things that we did was really picking up the hedges, improve nesting opportunities, change the cutting of them so that they could deliver more pollinator resources. And it meant that by doing that, birds could nest more safely in the hedgerow because there would be more thick, dense vegetation, and particularly like scraggly vegetation at the bottom of the hedge, which things like yellow hammers and grey partridge like to use. I think it sort of, to start off with, this hedge was about 1 metre wide, and that's about 4 metres wide now. And it's right next to this grass margin here is actually flower margin. So give it a couple of months and that will be full of legumes and knapweed, wild carrot, all sorts of things. And then this is another one. So we've got, this is from 2018 come to 99. And there's actually a watercourse running along a brook. And it's at the bottom of the hill between these two fields that we owned either side. And there wasn't that much of a buffer on the watercourse. So it's any nutrients that was running off the field was going straight into that watercourse. So we just like increased the buffer there. Allowed the willows and hedges and stuff to grow up a little bit. In both pictures, you can see there's quite a bit of shading there on the edge of the field. And where you get a lot of shading, that can mean that it's harder to grow a crop. So why not put it down to a really nice grass margin? That would be great for sort of meadow browns and all sorts of things. We leave that uncut, so it's a great refuge for insects over winter. And it's all like tussocky grasses and stuff, so that can help hold nutrients on the field. So actually does helps to reduce the risk of pollution as well downstream. And then testing your memory a little bit to that sort of comparison of the different hedges. There comes a point where the hedges get quite big, and this is us sort of cracking on and doing some work that we did the winter just gone, and the winter before that is doing some hedge laying. So in managing our hedges, we do a bit of laying around the farm, which is a really traditional method of restoring hedgerows. I could probably talk about hedgerows for half an hour, but we can pick on that later. But there's all sorts of things you can do. To my mind, you can go around and you can manage a farm, and you can think of hedgerows as something where they just need to be kept neat and tidy, and they're just a pretty boring border going around farm. Some of them can look actually really sad from being over-managed or not managed at all. Or they can be a resource for nesting, for pollinators, for storing carbon. If you have, like, this hedge is uphill of a ditch, and with all those roots underneath it, they can help capture nutrients and secure soil to stop it running off into your watercourse. They can provide shelter for livestock. I mean, the possibilities of what a hedge can deliver if managed in the right way is endless. So, like, we take that quite seriously. And then, so I've talked quite a bit about like how we're providing things around the edges of fields, but we've now, I think, since 2018, we've been starting to improve access to the whole field for nature, including pollinators. Like, we grow beans and we grow oilseed rape, and they require pollination. But if you have habitats like this going through the middle of your field, then you've got connected habitats for pollinators and things that do pest control for you, and all sorts of really beneficial insects across the whole field. We took part in an experiment that was like us and 16 farms that is actually starting to gather evidence to show this, which is really exciting. That there is research coming out now which is showing real win-wins for nature and for farm businesses and for reducing pesticide use. So that's something that we're doing a lot more around the farm. The sharp-eyed amongst you probably see that there's trees in these strips, and that's part of a trial that we're doing. I'm looking at agroforestry, seeing if that can be another way that you can diversify your business and potentially store carbon and stuff as well. So the research behind putting flower margins in the field is growing and increasing. The agroforestry potential, which is trees in fields or trees in a farming system, has got quite a way to go. So we're working on that as well. That's just that picture again. It just is like a bit of a reminder of where we were and then where we were quite recently. And then that field, which I had at the start, is the same field as that we had in the middle there. So we're kind of going back again to creating opportunities, and that's one of the things that were provided by having these small fields here before the 50s, 60s and 70s when hedgerows were taken out, is you had connectivity all along these field boundaries. But they were seen as a waste of space. So policy paid farmers, and there were massive incentives to grub out hedgerows and fill in ditches and make it all one big farmed area. And we couldn't go back to these fields now because they'd be really awkward for our contractor to work with the big machinery that they have. I mean, that little triangle there would just be a right nuisance. And having lots and lots of little corners of fields like that means lots of turning of tractors, and it could actually be quite tricky to farm and damaging to soil health. I'm a bit worried. I've clicked twice there. It might click. Oh no, we're all right. So yeah, this field here, we've created that connectivity again, but we've done it in straight lines. So these are wildflower margins, which will hopefully they should be coming into their own this year. Actually, they were quite newly planted then. But we're recreating that connectivity, but in a way that works with modern farming systems. And then these little dots here, in case you're wondering, they're not mistakes from drilling their skylark plots, which is, they're also pretty important for helping like improving opportunities for skylark breeding. And they were actually one of the first things that were researched on the farm going back to like 2002, so quite a long time ago. These are just some pictures of the infield research trials. So these were the first wildflower margins that we put in 2018. So they're 6 years old now, and they're just getting better and better each year. We've got research now which is starting to show that they can help us with our slug control. They found evidence of increased aphid predation in vegetation where they have these strips, more pollinators. Earthworms seem to benefit from these as well. And earthworms are basically like, they save our contractor a job of going out with the cultivator because they can do it for us, which seems crazy. But there is some figure out there about how many tons of soil earthworms move per year. And it's incredible. They do such a good job of improving the soil health. And so, yeah, there's some really interesting stuff found from that trial. And that was run with Centre of Ecology and Hydrology in Rothamsted. This is a picture of our oilseed rape on the right-hand side, which we grow and we sell it under a Fair to Nature label, which is a certification scheme which shows that we are nature friendly and we have the right amount of habitat to look after wildlife, and it's got all sorts of things that we are assisted in doing to benefit soils for carbon and water as well as biodiversity. And then we had a trial there looking at how we can farm using plants to replace the need for pesticides to control insect pests. So again, getting back to that, like enhancing natural systems. And then this bottom picture is our agroforestry trial. So you might be able to just pick out the strips of trees there. And this is 11-hectare field. And we're researching to look at how you can have those wildflower strips, but if you put trees in them, so like apples and cob nuts, can you diversify the food that you're getting in from that field? Having some kind of permaculture in there means that it might increase the stability of the business because you're not having to worry. The whole field is reliant on annual cropping, which has so many risks with it. Ask any farmer, they are always worrying about the weather and the timing. Like, you can't switch off from it because you're constantly having to think, when can we get the crop in the ground? How can we manage it? And if we've got trees in there that are already established, it might just de-risk it a bit. So we've got a whole suite of monitoring on there, looking at the benefits for pollinators, soil, carbon, water. I won't go through the whole list in detail, but it's worth saying that we did it. So we put this in place because the government they're putting in payments to pay farmers to do agroforestry. And one big thing about what we do, all this demonstration work, is feed into policymakers. So we talk to farmers about what we're doing and try and give like practical advice. But we also say to policy, like if policymakers want to put something in, and we're trying to do it and finding it really difficult, it's important that we share that. And that's something I'm really grateful for doing what I do, is that we can try things, give it our best job, and talk to the people to try and make a difference so that it can work better for farmers. So yeah, at the moment, the government they're going to be paying to put in agroforestry in next year, I think. And at the moment, we planted these in the winter before that horrendous drought a couple of years ago. So I said it was going to sort of like de-risking the business, but that has been a really tricky field to get those trees up and going and keeping them alive. So yeah, real fun and games, that field. This is just a little bit of the wildlife that we have out on the farm. The worst picture, or the blurriest, least technically good picture, is the big one that I took on the bottom right hand side. But just hopefully you can see just the massive yellow hammers in there and reed buntings. I think there was a tree sparrow or two in that flock as well. And that's the kind of flocks that we get in winter, coming in and out of the hedges, going to the winter bird seed mixes, and making use of them. And it's just an amazing sight. We've got bunting in the top left-hand corner there. Last year we had over 100 corn buntings on the farm in winter, which was a record for us, but that was just phenomenal. They were using mostly this overwinter cover crop, where it had grown up sort of between knee and hip height, and we planted it to restore the soil. But because of all of the seeds and everything in there from fodder radish and linseed and mustards and stuff, I mean, they were having a great time. There were a few hundred linnets on it as well. And it was, yeah, if there was ever anything that was stressing us out in the office, you'd go and walk to the corner of that field and stand there, and everything would be all right in the world again. And then we've got the grey partridge there just loafing on, I think that was a direct drilled, or actually that might be an overwinter fallow that was left there. I can't really remember, to be honest. I could tell you which field it is, but I can't remember what it was in at the time. But we see quite a few grey partridge around in winter, and they're sort of paired off for summer. It's really nice to see them. And then that bottom left-hand corner, that was from Kevin, who took the hare photo. He also took those. And then we've got the nice yellow hammer in the middle, which we have a few hundred on farm over winter. And good numbers in the summer and territories as well. And then I think this is the last thing I'll go through, is just sort of the graphs on how things are doing. So our breeding farmland birds, that's done with CBC surveys. There's Jordan going out and doing about 10 walks and marking the territories. That's on the right-hand side. And the red line is what we're doing at Hope Farm and how we're doing a percentage change. Blue line is that continued decline. So there's a lot to do in the wider landscape. And we've kind of sit now between 150 and 250% above baseline with our territories. There's been a few tricky years in recent years with sort of wet seasons, and then really hot weather has, or on our farm, things all shut up quite early or struggled a bit, and we think that's what the sort of recent drop off is from. And the dotted lines, that's during COVID, when unfortunately monitoring years were missed. And then with the butterflies, their numbers go up and down like a yo-yo depending on the weather. For me, I'm quite concerned about what's going to happen with the butterflies, with the climate being so variable and so difficult at the moment. But even with these up and downs, we kind of have an underlying trend where things seem to still be on the increase. That sits just under 400% above baseline. And then this is our wintering numbers. It's worth having a look at the y-axis on this one, because although it looks like it's a similar level of decline, like that one last year was about 25 times, so 2,500% above the baseline that we were when we started. So the percentage change of winter farmland birds has been amazing. It's been really up and down in recent years, and again, the weather's been really strange in winter, and there's all things happening, whether it's warm over in Scandinavia or whatever. But it was in about 2015 that we started moving to regenerative farming, and that's probably got a reason. That's probably why we have these high peaks, is when we had some more cover crops and direct drilled land in where we had these numbers. But We're getting a master's student to analyse that data and try and unpick whether it's that or the weather or what has that reason for that huge volatility in wintering numbers. I think that might be. Oh no, and then this is just quickly going through the research that we've had in the last few years. So we've had corn buttercup reintroductions. Our skylark plots, we had about 22 PhD and master's projects, moth trapping, looking at yellow wagtail, carbon farming projects, and looking at starling feeding as well. And then that's just if you want to find out more, we've got that. And then this is one of my favourite pictures, is a lapwing chick that was ringed on farm in 2019. And I've never managed to see a lapwing chick quite that close up before. Right. So if I stop sharing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, incredible. I mean, it's just amazing what you and the team have managed over such a short period of time. I've got a million questions to ask you. We haven't got that much time. But looking at the graphs that you showed us of the charts, it's quite clear that your method of farming is beneficial for wildlife. It's nature friendly. Another stupid question, but I do not understand why. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. But is it because, I mean, do other farmers, do they kind of embrace this kind of idea, this new, well, it's not new, I suppose, but do they embrace this kind of thing? Or is it because it's all about the bottom line? Or is it because all of those things, plus the fact that they have no interest in, well, not actually all the thing, basically bottom line and the fact they're not interested in nature. Why is it that other farmers? I know it's not a quick answer, but I don't understand.
No.
Some farmers, not all, by the way, because that's the other problem we have. And you mentioned it earlier, us versus them. All farmers or whatever. I'm sure, and I know actually a few farmers are very nature friendly. But what is it? Why, in a very quick nutshell, why is it that everyone's not doing this?
I can't do it in a quick nutshell. I'll try not to, but even as you were saying that, there's so many different variables of why all farmers aren't doing it. I mean, I think we always have to remember farmers, that's their livelihood at the end of the day. And I do think that's something that some farmers may still be a bit skeptical of us at Hope Farm, because we're a charity, and obviously we're going to be, we want to have wildlife there. They sometimes might question where our priorities are. But at the end of the day, we've got to show, I haven't shown the finances, we've got to show it works a business. Otherwise, we're never going to convince any farmer to do the same. And there's a lot of farmers out there now showing that this kind of farming is really profitable. Especially if you're taking awkward corners out of your farm, which aren't that profitable to start off with, and then getting paid a good amount of money to put it down to habitats. And normally they put those payments based on average yields and average income for your crops. So if you've got any corners of the fields which are making less than average, you could make more money by putting them into conservation. And that's without the whole thinking about the natural pest control services and all of those things you can deliver. But there are so many things that are influencing farmers and how they're doing things. There's pressures from their family, what their education was and what their pressure is from their family and how to farm. Have they got their father on their back or mother who's thinking, no, this is the way we were farming, to farm it to the edge. And then it's really hard for somebody else to come in and say, actually, I think that we should farm it in a different way. And that takes a lot of time as well and a lot of planning. So we work on 5-6 year rotations with our crops, and you can't really get a full picture of how things change in a single year. So it will take that amount of time to put things in. And for us here at home, it took 3 years to get it so that we had time to think about what we could do, convince Dad that it might be worthwhile to do, and then give it another year to be able to plan what needs to go in place, and then put in an agreement to get paid through stewardship. And then it might take another 6 months before we have something running we can get paid to do it. So it takes a long time. And I think one of the big things is that, and this is changing, is where the research is and what information is available. So for a long time, there's been like farmers, they get advice from an agronomist, which is an advisor on what pesticides that they can use and what fertilizers, how to apply. And there's always been a very strong link to the producers of the pesticides and the fertilizers and stuff. So, and that's where all the money is. So that's where a lot of agricultural research was funded for a long time. It used to be government funded, going like back 60 years or so. And then the government thought it'd be a good idea to not do that. So then the research gets done where the money is. And now things are almost, there's more money for research now to look for sustainable farming practices. And there's more bits of information coming out, like with that trial with the infield wildflowers. And it's that kind of thing, showing that nature-friendly farming makes business sense, which I think is going to make the difference. You're always going to have the farmers who think that it's a waste of time and you're taking food out of production, even if it's a bit of land which isn't really growing food very well, and it's costing more money to grow than you are selling it for. There will still be those farmers who don't see that. But the majority of farmers, if it's made accessible enough, if the information is out there so that they can see the benefits and they're given enough time and support to be able to make that change in their business, I think it will work. And actually, with the government schemes being so accessible to put these things in, there's quite a few farmers that I never thought I'd be able to talk to. And I'm not going to name them, but I never thought I'd be able to talk to them about putting in habitats. And they sort of said, oh, Georgie, how can we? I'm thinking of putting in so many hectares of wildflowers and seed mixes. What should I do?
So are you saying that the UK government currently are doing something to encourage nature-friendly farming, or could they be doing a lot more? And again, this, I know it's a whole can of worms here, and I don't particularly want to get political, especially given I haven't got much time. But what's your general view on that?
I think going from where we've come from, which is where farmers were, not that long ago, farmers were paid to grub out hedgerows to maximize production, and we had like massive food surpluses. We're now at a point where farmers are getting paid not per, and then it sort of moved to bit farmers being paid per area of land to do like very minimal environmental actions. So minimal it didn't really make much difference, but it stopped the damage that was done getting any worse, and we kind of just sat on this low baseline. We've now moved with Brexit and the opportunity to change to new environmental management schemes, to paying farmers enough money that they feel it, that farmers who might not even be interested in yellowhammers, to at least to start with, to say, I think it's worth you putting a winterbird seed mix in the ground. And I think that's brilliant, because once you get farmers seeing what wildlife is there and making a difference, that's when you get the interest going. But the downside of it is these farmers who haven't put any of these things in before won't necessarily know how to put it in a way that's going to make it the most efficient use of land to deliver for nature. And I kind of think if we're a small country, we've got finite land use needs to be efficient. And that means that you need to think about how it can deliver for food and nature. If we've got lots of farmers being paid to put nature things in, but they're not of good quality, that's not efficient. And then it's still, I don't think, a good use of public money. So if we get the right advice out to farmers and the right support so they do it correctly, then yes, it will be good. But that's the final bit, which I'm not hugely confident in at the moment.
Yeah, you talk about Brexit. That's probably my last question here.
Okay. Oh no.
I'm thinking. I mean, yeah, I'm not even going to tell you what I feel about Brexit, but
No.
I'm thinking about the opportunities lost perhaps to learn from farmers in Europe. And again, I'm speaking from a non-farmer, totally unscientific, just emotional here. But having visited, areas in Eastern Europe, and even, I'm based in Spain, so even in Spain, I mean, there's lots of intensive farming there, but there's also farming which seems to really benefit wildlife. But let me go back to Eastern Europe. It's really good there in terms of, you go into these farms and you're hearing quails singing and corncrakes and there's redback shrikes and there's tons of yellowhammers, even more than I mean, your farm's great, but I mean, generally speaking, much more. Um, did we as UK farmers, did we ever look to Europe to sort of work out ways of farming, or have we always kind of thought, right, this is how we do it and that's that?
I don't know. I mean, it's a very different kind of farming, isn't it? Like that's almost I bits of it I think are almost what our farming was 50 years ago. Like smaller farms, smaller machinery. Um, it worries me that it might go in a direction where it almost goes through what we've done and lose all of those amazing things. But it's like you get turtle doves over there, and at Hope Farm, we've been trying to recreate the habitats here, where we've lost a load of scrub, where we don't have the right feeding resources. And then I went over to Greece and I saw like this habitat, and I was like, oh my god, this looks like turtle dove heaven. This is what it is that we're trying to create. God, what we've got is no wonder they're all here, sort of thing. And then sure enough, there were turtle doves calling and they were quite happy as Larry there. I think there are things that could be learned, and it's almost a lens into the past, isn't it? And what we did have. I think as much as anything, like learning and knowing what was done on our farms 50 years ago and some is what we can learn from, like finding out where the old ponds were. Oh, that's why that bit of land is really unproductive, always sits wet and doesn't grow crops very well. It's because it wants to be a pond again, so let's make it a pond. And there's like bits around the farm, the fields around Hope Farm house are our best fields, and that's probably because for hundreds of years they were the closest bit to the farm and the cattle sheds or horse stables or whatever, so that's where the muck went. So we can learn from that and know that we need to be doing that on a rotation on the farm. And again, they had lathes and that helped to restore the soil by having that wider rotation. All of these things are things that we did used to do here.
Okay. Georgie, favorite what is your favorite member of the wildlife community on the farm?
Grey partridge. They're so much fun. They're every farmer resonates with grey partridge and loves them and wants them back on farm. And like on an evening at dusk, you walk out to a bit on the farm and hearing them is just magic. And they're very entertaining as well.
Yeah, a bird that's declined phenomenally. I can't remember the last time I saw one in the UK actually. And finally, if you could be anywhere on the planet, where would you be right now?
Right now, considering what the weather's like in everywhere at the moment. I'm not sure. There are so many different places that would be great to be. I think let's go wild. I'd say go off to the Amazon or something.
Right, fantastic. Well, listen, Georgie, I think you are an amazing ambassador for nature farming, nature-friendly farming. And I think despite the fact we've had barely any time to talk, I mean, we should really have 4 hours talking to learn a lot more. But I've learned a lot from just this conversation. You are certainly an old head on top of young shoulders. But thank you very much for your time. It's been really, really fascinating, and I wish you all the best. And one final question: can people come and visit Hope Farm, or is it a question of looking it up online and
Yeah,
finding?
no, absolutely. We have our Open Farm Sunday event on the 9th of June, which is it's a crazy day. We have about 900 people on the farm all at once, or all on the same day. But it's a really good way of because everything is on show. You can go on wildlife walks, and Jordan will have all sorts of bugs and stuff under a microscope. We've got tractor and trailer rides, and there's so many different things to come and look at. So I would urge you, keep an eye out on the website, and we will be advertising for you to have a look from there, or actually on the Open Farm Sunday website will be logged on there as well.
So if you're watching this in the future and you've missed June 2024 and you're watching this in 2028 or something, worry not. Go to the website or whatever technology there is then, and I'm sure you'll find out more. Anyway, listen.
Oh yeah, June every year.
Well, thank you very much. And again, as I say, all the best. And thank you, Zoomers, for being here as well. And you know what to do. Keep on looking up.